Our view is at Durango, Mexico. Sounding pretty lively for 7:15 in the morning. We're facing east, and sunrise should be along in about 20 minutes. When the sun does come up, it'll be just outside of the range of our view here, over to the right. Now there's a purpose for all this attention on where does the sun come up at this location and date. And the reason for that is this. The time here is 7:34. We've noted that the sunrise occurs just beyond our field of view, over to the right. So, what is that red object appearing there above the horizon? What conclusion can we draw from this? Is there any type of clear assessment that can be made as to the question of what is that and what is occurring here? Progress toward an accurate understanding of what we see here rides on the fact that around the world there are many anomalous effects and events occurring. Anomalous things such as the behavior of the sun, the appearance of the moon, numerous aspects of the Earth's magnetic field, the disoriented behavior of birds, insects, and marine life. Moreover, there are peculiarities in the solar system at large. And now this unidentified celestial object, glowing red on the horizon, is a profound example of these anomalous events. We turn now to consider another thought-provoking situation. Acapulco, Mexico, August 18th, 2018. It's morning. It's about 7:15. So what do we see here? Is there anything of significance in relation to our study? Well, what's the deal with these radiant areas? As usual, we'll need to know what direction we're facing and what time of day is it. We're facing south-southwest, and the time at this point is 18 minutes past 7 in the morning. In the standard public version of our solar system, all of this action going on here is unidentified, unaccounted for. It's one big anomaly. Notice the characteristics of this light and the way it intensifies at the center. So what is the celestial object that is at the nucleus, the source of this? And we already know that it cannot be the morning sun because of the direction we're facing. But let's check what the exact time of sunrise is anyway. And there we have it. Sunrise is at 7:23. And that's interesting because this light is up there in the sky before sunrise even occurs. And the location of that will be at 76 degrees east. So I'll have to ask again, what's that light in the sky? It's the same answer, the same conclusion that is brought forward throughout all of these videos that I'm doing on this subject. Same answer. There's something else in this view that is of enormous further interest, And for me, it feels like a very challenging aspect to bring up for discussion. And the reason why is that upon first introduction, this seems clearly preposterous. And I'm referring to this and this. And the thing that would seem preposterous is if some guy came along pointing those out saying, look at those two objects there. I mean, they're round or almost round. Those might be planets in that Planet X system. Could you please stop laughing so I can explain this? Thank you. Well, the guy who comes along pointing those things out, in this case, is me. And yes, at first glance and first introduction, such a suggestion is totally absurd. Wouldn't this be a situation where somebody sees a round shape up in the clouds and leaps to the conclusion, oh, it's round, planets are round, that's a planet? Such is the precarious territory we are thrown into if we are going to be so naive as to even suggest that a roundish impression, like what we're pointing out here, could remotely be a planet. Now, I am being a little bit sarcastic there because that is exactly what I'm saying. This circular, huge feature that we see there, and the one to the right of it, are from planets in the Nemesis system. Now, in the previous video to this one, I briefly discussed the basis upon which I would make such a seemingly stupid claim. Now, there's an awful lot of data and information to bring forward to properly outline that basis. You might have heard the old axiom, a picture is worth 1,000 words. What we're going to do at the moment is just view a number of situations where this phenomena is seen. Now, I hasten to add, I'm not saying that every time there's a roundish circular feature up there in the clouds, that's one of these members of the Planet X system. Of course, there are endless variations where you can have things that appear to be round, yet are nothing of any significance. However, as I said a moment ago, there are occurrences of this that are tremendously significant. This one illustrates how oftentimes these manifestations will appear as a dark, shadowed object. There is also another major issue going on in this view. I'm referring to all those clouds that are smudged all over the entire sky. And of course, when I call that clouds, to a lot of people, that statement would seem dreadfully oblivious to what is actually going on here, because that is not clouds. We're talking about chemtrails. And if you've been told that chemtrails is nothing more than a wild conspiracy theory on the internet, you've been misinformed. It was in 2010 that I became aware of this situation and began observing and learning regarding it. Along with the education from nearly 10 years of observation and study, regarding the whole situation of this deceitful aerosol spraying program. And I've also learned something about human nature, and that is, when it comes to subjects like this, chemtrails or Planet X, some people want to know what's going on. And there are others who don't want to know. I remember clearly one day when I was walking at the park with friends and people that would be considered as close. Here in Hastings on that day, our sky was hammered with these chemical trails. I pointed up, saying, "Look." And this one person with us literally plugged her ears and fixed her eyesight upon the ground and quickly declared, "Chemtrails don't exist." Yeah, that's the world we're living in. Anyway, we'll take a short detour here to watch a few clips from people who have video recorded the sky in their home area during times when it was their town's turn for the big spray day. This first video is from Lancashire, England, filmed on 13th of January 2012. Seeing this and trying to make sense of it just leaves you dumbfounded. Have all these pilots lost their way to the airport? Because we can see that planes are going in all directions. In these few video clips, we've seen this insane aerosol spraying program being conducted in England, the Netherlands, Germany, and the USA. And we could continue with similar documentation from all around the world. Moving now to continue on with the main subject of this discussion, I'll resume the narrative with a copy of the same words I said a few minutes ago. And of course, when I call that clouds, to a lot of people, that statement would seem dreadfully oblivious to what is actually going on here. Because that is not clouds. What I'm talking about is chemtrails. Most everybody who would be watching a video on this subject is already fully informed about this monstrous situation. somehow, some way, powers that are bigger than me and perhaps bigger than you, that are beyond our knowledge and sight, are spending a lot of money and a lot of work to keep the sky obscured so that we are prevented from having a clear view of what's up there. Now, the item we were initially noticing is this dark object at about the 3 o'clock position of the sun. We'll come back to that in a moment, but there's also an interesting demonstration here of how this layer of obscurity, which they've sprayed over the sky, seems to be doing its job pretty good. And that is the job of keeping us from being able to see certain things. To illustrate what I'm referring to, just have a look at this sky in general. Narrow that down to just the upper third and take notice of what's there. And so the question is, did you notice this? I can give you the results on how well I did on that. And that is, I looked at this picture numerous times in setting up this video and everything else. And for a long time, I never noticed it. And then somewhere along the line, it kind of suddenly appeared there. But of course, it was there all along. Turning our attention back to this darker object that we noted earlier, I raised the question, what is that? Let's look at another event at this same location, but on a different date. Right off the bat, at first glance, we can see that there's a lot going on here that could be of interest to our study. But let's just pick one thing to focus our observation on for the moment. So notice this dark area over to the right of the sun. And we'll watch how this develops over the next few minutes. Wow, and what should we make of that? This is what I'm talking about when I say that at times we are seeing signs or symptoms, indications of planetary bodies that pertain to the Nemesis system. One detail that I'd really like to get a clearer understanding on is that spherical shape that is smaller and brighter in color there on the left edge of the dark body. And at this stage, things become more challenging because what about that one? That would make 3 spherical objects right here in this spot. Now I'd love to discuss and clarify more about this specific train of thought, but to do that here takes us off on a lengthy involvement that isn't planned for this current discussion. For the moment, our attention is mainly on this larger, spherical, dark object. From the way that it cuts in front of the sun's light, and from the detail that we're seeing a shaded or dark side of that sphere, we may thus understand that this is closer to us than the sun, as opposed to being on the far side, away from the Earth. At this stage, it's interesting to switch back to the similar event we were looking at. From the time display in the upper right corner, we can see that this footage was recorded on May 4th, 2018. And then back to the larger one, the date of that video capture was April 24th, 2018. And with these 2 separate events side by side, we can see the outrageous efforts to obscure and hide it all in both occasions. There's one important factor I'd like to address about this video and others that I make on this subject, and that is the date. For example, we've just now been looking at events from April and May of last year. Moreover, it's regular to find in my work on this observations from the past year or 2. So a critical question that might be raised is, wouldn't those things be out of date and irrelevant now? I've addressed this question in a few of the videos on this channel, and the short explanation is, no, it's not out of date and not irrelevant. The nature of this Nemesis star and the planetary system with it, and the multi-millennia long orbital course that it travels, creates a situation where observations from 3 years, 5 years, and even 10 years ago do indeed constitute current events in the final block of, say, 15 or 20 years of this major event that is unfolding as we speak. We're going to glance through several events now, skimming over only briefly, as we won't take time for discussions and explanations, other than to point out right now that in all of these cases, the sun is not in the picture. So the intense body of light in each case is something other than the sun. So on that note, let's look at some video footage from just today. Mexico City, the Santa Fe district. Now let's skip ahead a couple hours so that we can have a look at this. The lovely morning sunshine of March 6th, 2019. As it turns out, there is stunning data in the video capture from this morning. What I'm referring to is visible there already. But let's skip ahead to the time point of about 8:37, where one of them becomes much more obvious. So, what about now? Do you see anything out there that looks applicable to the point of our discussion? For me, the answer would be definitely yeah. And it's right there. You see that little speck? No, not really. I'm actually just kidding here. It's actually there. Are we able to realize and grasp the significance of this? And combined with all the other data involved in this whole subject, the conclusion arises that it is a planetary body of the Nemesis system. Are we able to believe what we're seeing right in front of our eyes? I think to a large extent, our normal mindset tends to just keep generating excuses and reasons to explain it away as nothing of importance. It's a wet spot on the lens. It's a reflection from something round. It's not there. I don't see anything there. It's a cloud. There's no way that it's a planet, and so on. It's as if we'll allow it to be anything except the claim that it is in fact a huge planet that shouldn't even be there and that we don't even know the name of. I'd like to bring up some pictures that I took a few weeks ago on February 19th, 2019. We have a view of Hastings Pier, which is near where I live. On that lovely day, we went out to have some fun at the seaside, and then very soon I started noticing this madness in the sky overhead. Thus, we run into the subject that was touched upon earlier, chemtrails. This is a multifaceted operation by which they are achieving a few different objectives. And as I mentioned earlier, one of these objectives is to obscure the sky to prevent the inhabitants of the Earth from seeing this Planet X and all the stuff that's coming along with it. Now, I'd be the first to acknowledge how stupid that sounds. In fact, for a long time, when I would hear this claim coming from various sources and researchers, well, I didn't give much credence to that theory, as it just seemed too quaint. I mean, give me a break. They're spraying chemtrails to obscure the sky to hide Planet X. Well, that sounds pretty tinfoil hat-worthy to me. And the real twist is, it's actually true. One of the preeminent objectives of the aerosol spraying chemtrail program is to obscure the sky to prevent the masses from seeing Planet X and the numerous aspects of that incoming system. We'll take a minute here to look at 3 more demonstrations of this. 26th of July, 2018, Toledo, Ohio. The first thing to notice here is that the sky has been obliterated with these chemical trails. And bear in mind that even in areas that may look like there are no chemtrails, well, actually the entire sky is under the pall of aerosols that were sprayed earlier, but have spread out, becoming a cloak veiling the sky. Here we've got 2 chemtrails forming a near-perfect giant X, and by coincidence or not, this X converges right over one of the details of paramount interest in this scene. What I'm referring to is actually 2 items, and if we go back a few minutes in this footage, we can see them more clearly. This method of obscuring the sky, spraying all that junk up there, is actually quite effective, and in most cases they do achieve invisibility in terms of obscuring our view from seeing Planet X and co. However, under the right conditions, sometimes, like we see here, all those efforts are just not managing to completely hide the object. Now, the person who captured this video is a pleasant chap in Ohio. I don't know his name, but on YouTube his channel name is Earthwatcher. And so here he zooms in a bit on this area. And while Earthwatcher's attention was mainly on the chemtrails that are abominating the sky here, off to the left his camera was picking up something astounding. In the wider view, we were seeing 2 objects, and this was the smaller one. And the other object, that now seems huge by comparison, is up here. Thus, we have a dramatic demonstration of how this blitz of chemtrails covering the sky does obscure our view. And in fact, even though in this case, as in others, the chemtrail-generated cloak that has been cast up is insufficient to completely hide these things, I reckon they still have succeeded, because the way things look there, we can see those 2 roundish figures, but it's obscured well enough that it leaves us unable to conclude absolutely that such an unlikely thing is really there. We turn now to have a look at another event. Chesapeake Bay April 2018, filming from on board a fishing boat. That's why the picture is rocking back and forth. The main point delivered by this footage is simply, it's one more vivid example of the extreme proliferation of this chemtrail delivery program. We're looking now at Lake Erie with a chemtrail plastered sky. So we'll freeze the video to take note of things. We can see where the sun is right now. So what is this light? And while we're looking in this area, we'll notice this, this, and this. However, as soon as we start bringing in a big pile of questions, we start to lose our focus on any of it. So let's just walk it back to noticing just this object of light, what is it, and this large peculiar round thing here. Regarding that light object, some people may be inclined to disregard it because it's not really very impressive. And that is exactly part of the point we're raising here, and that is, all of the obfuscation of the sky has rendered the appearance of that object not very impressive. So here we see in living color the chemtrail program achieving its objective. We're not going to wrestle out further conclusions about that light object and other aspects here. We simply observe and accumulate observational data and allow the conclusions to come forward on solid ground as and when they will. So, reduce this down to what do we have and go no further than that. We have video footage here where we know where the sun is and we see this object of light. Because of the movement of the camera, the rocking of the boat, and so on, it comes in quite useful to extinguish the possibility that that light is some kind of a lens flare. It's an object that is giving off light there. There's a lot more going on here that we haven't talked about, but let's just move on. Getting back to the original point of this discussion, we had noted a few examples of how this spherical image can be seen, usually in the general direction of the sun. And this particular example is from the Toledo, Ohio chemtrail video that we observed a few minutes ago. And so, on that note, let's look again at the pictures I took last month down at Hastings Pier. What's that right in the center of the picture? Well, upon noticing this, we are immediately thrown into that mental contest of trying to discern if what we're seeing is indeed a glimpse of the unbelievable thing that is suggested in the observations thus far in this discussion. In other words, is it a planet, or is it simply a coincidental random occurrence resulting in the appearance of this shape, yet having no more significance than a regular cloud drifting across the sky? And thus we have a quandary, a perplexity. I mean, how can we even dare ask the question, might that roundish thing there actually be a huge planet? Now let's just size this up for a minute. Just now I've been pointing out an obscure and hardly visible circular shape up in the clouds, and questioning whether or not it's a planet. Now what is wrong with this picture? Well, there's a lot wrong with it. And what I mean is, under the normal set of circumstances that have prevailed for centuries, that entire question would be simply ludicrous. The pivotal factor here is that the world has come into a different set of circumstances than we have had for the past many centuries. And that new and different set of rules is because of the arrival and proximity of the Planet X system. Let's bring this to a close now, and we'll end with a review of events that we've touched upon in this video. So I'll stop talking here, and the rest will be a series of images from events that should have been headline news in most cases. So until next time, goodbye.